Storytelling heroes. So this story starts, I'm on the way back home from the airport on the day of Passover when I saw the post. It was posted in Yalla Young Leaders Alumni Group, an organization that connects Jews and Arabs from the Middle East and North Africa, which I discovered in college as I was writing a paper on a proposal for something very similar. I decided that if you can't beat them, join them, and many wonderful things have happened to me since as a result. That's why somewhere between Tel Aviv and Haifa I made the call to the number on the post, reaching the workshop facilitator, Fuad. I explained that I saw the post about the storytelling workshop starting 2 days later, as I gathered some information trying to figure out how to make room and if I was ready for this 2-week call to adventure. I arrived at a place called Givat Chaviva, directly to the classroom. I didn't have time to unpack or see the room I was given for the duration of the course, as I dived right into the trust building, as the ambience and setting for intimate storytelling was starting to establish. When I arrived, Stu, the second facilitator, told me I was right on time. I wasn't, but this became an ongoing joke as the group absorbed the participants joining late on the first Sunday morning together. One of the first exercises we did was an exercise I did with students in a multi-track diplomacy class. I called it What's in the Name, like Romeo and Juliet. Each participant tells the story of how they got the name and how they feel about it. Through this exercise, a lot of information is transmitted which reflects culture and anthropology, and it starts to break the ice. One of the questions that came up in the first free lunch was, why is the Dutch Embassy funding a 2-week storytelling workshop for Arab Jews and international? It was actually the third workshop of Share to Connect, building bridges through storytelling that they conducted, with the execution of the Amsterdam Storytelling Center. In the first two in Bet Jala, Area C, few Israelis participated, but in this workshop, in Israel, there was a lot of Israeli Jews. When we returned from the lunch, the issue of the Dutch funding came up again, and I tried to explain. This is diplomacy. This is what embassies do. This is exactly the type of peace-building activities that should be funded. What they did was plant seeds, hoping for intercultural cross-pollination. In the past, I was in programs funded by the US State Department, but in the last few years there is less funding for such programs, and I worry that people miss the important impact that people-to-people training programs have. The approach in our program was to train people in storytelling, an immersive program, experiencing the program firsthand, but also experiencing it as future facilitators of such processes. Storytelling is not a conversation and not a debate. By hearing more stories, we become more aware of other people's paradigms and what they see through their eyes, and perhaps their burden. Many initiatives such as the Parent Circle, Combatants for Peace, and Breaking the Silence use narrative and testimonies as a core part of their activity, in the spirit of transitional justice and as a way to grieve and bypass the revenge, searching for a different story and another way. I had hoped that the workshop would help me organize my thoughts and that I would do activities related to self-authoring, looking back at my past, connecting to my current state, and then trying to look forward, projecting towards a vision. I worried about vision writing. One of the stories I told was about how my passion for trying to write my vision and turning it into a book drove me to hell. This was the guiding question I chose to develop after a storytelling speed dating exercise. It was like remembrance of things of the past, and this thirst for the Proustian Madeleine moment. One way we would evoke stories is by asking, take me back to a moment when, and when you get there, you understand the game. An English teacher once gave me an exercise of describing cricket to an alien. In many ways, when we pack up our stories and tell them to those not native or aware of the cultural reference and nuance, we take with us the rules of the game and the rules of nature and how everything is connected to each other and the story. Once again, I encountered the hero's journey as we discussed story structure. Could this storytelling workshop be my cave, the turning point where I learn to master a new craft that will allow me to shine my light to the world? Would I find the right imagery to express myself, make the connection with the listener? How would I be heard as a storyteller? Were these newfound helpers the mentors that my story needed? Just another click of a digit in the lock? But would this finally unlock my inner spirit? Could I finally acquire the skill that would help me overcome the struggles and obstacles and reach the top of the mountain like a legend, safely making my way down like Moses when he brought down his truth from Mount Sinai? When we tell stories, there's something therapeutic. This is especially true when we describe and go back to old stations in our life to explain how we got to where we got and how we came about these conclusions, values and beliefs in the face of diversity. It wasn't this type of personal development workshop where you have to tell stories of your life. It's about telling stories of your life and from your life. In many ways, it did feel like an empowering support group, not bridging between partners in conflict. Unfortunately, for some of us, the conflict is intertwined in the narrative and in the subtext of our stories. During the workshop, I was preoccupied with the challenge of implementing what I learned. What would I do with the seeds that the Dutch embassy gave me? I could see this implemented in other conflict resolution situations, in coaching, and also with mental health approaches such as open dialogue. When someone is having a mental health crisis, it is important to stay hydrated, eat, sleep, and tell stories to be heard and even understood, not interrogated. An important part is collaborating and networking with other partners and institutions. For me, a natural connection was Bet Hagefen, an Arab-Jewish cultural center in Haifa where I work. The approach there is the narrative approach and meeting the other through the stories. We explored the new third space, a joint project between the culture and art departments at the center, and went for a tour in the Wadi Nisnas neighborhood. We had just passed the famous falafels, and one participant suggested we go to Robin Food. Robin Food is a social entrepreneurship project that rescues vegetables before they get discarded. They prepare food and recently opened a restaurant in the Talpiot market in Haifa. We had come to the center unannounced and hoped to meet someone to talk about collaboration. So the two facilitators and I ate at the old folks falafel and went back and had a meeting with the head of the center as the rest of the group went to Robin Food. It is important to institutionalize, and it's very European. That's why it was important that we meet all together before the facilitators left. We hope that the final conference will take place in Bet Hagefen, and we explored other ways we could collaborate on future activities. It was Holocaust Memorial Day, and we went to hear the power of the story, an initiative called Memory in the Living Room, where Holocaust survivors share their story. It was the first time I heard about the Jews who escaped to Shanghai. Towards the end of the story, she explained that she didn't get PTSD like others, because her story wasn't as bad, because she managed to flee Poland at a young age. Even though her narrative is not a central one that is remembered when speaking of the Holocaust, her story and her journey to the Far East should be heard and remembered, and now I have more depth as I learned another story. The following night we conducted a workshop with the International Peace High School that was opened this year at Givat Chaviva. It was a wonderful way to implement what we learned and to apply it as a facilitator. I explained to the students that we were not looking to create a melting pot of cultures and one story stew, but rather an authentic buffet. The kids said that they learned a lot and that the connection was empowering, deepening their knowledge of one another. The storytelling campfire kept ablaze for 2 weeks as we learned about storytelling and about life through other people's eyes. Now that we built bridges and planted seeds, it's time to nurture, hope and prepare for harvest as we return to our ordinary world, having acquired the new deeds that will allow us to overcome adversity and find peace as we try to build our little versions of heaven on earth.